Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of The County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. Have you noticed it? There's a calm all over the Wasatch Front. In fact, it's over the entire state because the legislature has come to a close. They've packed up shop and gone home until their interim meetings in the middle of the summer. What that means is that we processed hundreds of bills, not only for the House, but for the Senate. Some of them passed, some of them didn't make it. Today, we are going to look at it from a county perspective. We will put the lens on of Utah's counties and see how the legislature did. We will get to that discussion in a minute, but we first thought it might be interesting if you saw how a bill is made.
I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's...
Do you remember this video from Schoolhouse Rock? The process of a bill becoming a law is a long one, especially in Washington, D.C. But there's a similar process that takes place here in the Utah State Legislature. Let's find out how a bill becomes a law here in Utah.
It all starts with an idea that is drafted into a bill by a legislator with the help of a staff attorney from the Office of the Legislative Research and General Counsel. Once an idea has been drafted into bill form and approved, it is numbered and posted on the state's website. The bill then heads to either the House or the Senate, depending on where it originated. Each body will read over the bill 3 different times. By the end of the process, the bill will have been read 6 different times before moving on to becoming a law. After the first reading, the Rules Committee then designates the bill to a standing committee in either the House of Representatives or the Senate, who will then oversee the bill. The chair of the designated committee will put that bill on an agenda for a public hearing, and this is an opportunity where citizens will have a chance to speak for or against that piece of legislation. After the hearing, the committee may then amend, substitute, hold, table, or pass the bill. And once a bill is passed by the committee, it proceeds to its second reading.
In the House of Representatives, the second reading of a bill consists of reading the committee report and having it adopted by the body. There are no debates or amendments made at this time, and the bill is scheduled for its third reading. If the bill is in the Senate for its second reading, it is presented to the body and debated. At that point, it can either be substituted or amended, but must pass by majority before moving on to its third reading.
The third reading is the same process in either body. They read the bill by number and short title, and the sponsor explains the contents of the bill and answers any questions from the other legislators, who at that time can make amendments, substitutions, or other actions that they feel are necessary. After the changes have been made, it is finally put to a vote. In order for a bill to pass, it must receive a majority of 38 votes in the House and 15 votes in the Senate. Once the bill passes from the organizing branch, it is sent to the opposite body, where it must have a sponsor from that house in order to proceed. If the bill is changed in the opposite house, it must then be sent back to the originating house for concurrence. If a bill passes both the House and the Senate, it is signed by the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House, and is sent to the governor for his signature. Once a bill reaches the governor's desk, there are 3 different things that could happen. He can sign the bill, making it law. He can choose not to sign a bill, and it will still become law unless the governor vetoes that bill, at which point it will not become law unless the legislature overrides the governor's veto.
During the 45-day legislative session, 497 bills were introduced in the House, and another 330 were introduced in the Senate. Of all those bills that were introduced, just over 400 await the governor's signature in order to become law. And that's how a bill becomes a law here in the state of Utah. For the county seat, I'm Derek Dowsett.
Thanks, Derek. Very well put. I feel like I can go out and conquer the legislative world now. We're going to take a commercial break. When we come back, we will be joined from our friends from UAC, the Utah Association of Counties, and take a look at the legislative wrap-up for this year.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah County? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
Planning your next conference or corporate event? The Davis Conference Center offers 70,000 square feet of flexible meeting and exhibit space, plus high-tech audio-visual services that will make your event a success. Whether you're planning a training, meeting, company retreat, wedding, or large convention, let the staff at the Davis Conference Center help you arrange your next event. Located east of I-15 in Layton, call 801-416-8888 or visit davisconferencecenter.com today.
There is a place where young and old make connections, where kids feel like grown-ups, and grown-ups feel like kids. There is a place where beauty arises in contrast, where wonder is universal, and laughter second nature. There is a place where friends find a future, families find each other, and feelings find their home. There is a place.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are looking at a legislative wrap-up, how the counties see the legislative session in retrospect. Joining us for the conversation from the Utah Association of Counties, Public Lands Attorney Mark Ward and the Executive Director Adam Troop. Guys, thanks for joining us today. A very interesting legislative session. There was a lot of stuff in play, and my impression was that it got way close to the end before anything really started happening. Some years they kind of chugged through stuff, but this seemed like it was fast and furious. Is that your impression?
I think that's very true. One of the primary reasons was that there were a large number of very significant issues. Frequently there may be one or two that people are trying to come to agreement on, but in this session there were 3 or 4 very significant long-term issues that were trying to be resolved, and until there were agreements on those, nothing really broke loose. It was a sort of proverbial logjam because everything had to wait for something to get through the funnel. And when it did, it all broke loose. Things happened quickly, and it turned out pretty well, I think, for everyone.
Let's cover some of the big ones. Obviously, I think there was more newspaper coverage on transportation than anything else this year. House Bill 362. From a county standpoint, Adam, what do you think is the most important part of that?
I think the most important part really is the shared burden that comes from the decision that they made to pass that piece of legislation. There's a state tax portion, and there is a local entity, local government portion, a county option tax that's available through public referendum, through a ballot process that allows the county to impose a quarter-cent tax for transportation, and then to share that across different portions across different entities, part with the cities, part with transportation, part with the counties. That was a huge step forward, and it took a lot of discussion and agreement. But the companion portion of that really was that there's also a gas tax increase process that came about for the state. So the shared responsibility, the shared burden to try to deal with infrastructure needs between the counties and the local governments was a huge step forward, I think.
So is this going to work like tourism and restaurant tax, where it's the county the commissioners decide to pull the trigger, or is it structured a little differently?
It is actually similar to that, but it is done through a ballot initiative, so not an initiative, through a referendum. So it has to be put to a public decision, but the county will have to decide whether they want to go forward to impose that and put that on the ballot. that really will be done in discussion with the cities within the county and by the county commission. So it's not simply the county making unilateral decision. It's going to have to be everyone coming to the table and saying, yes, let's work through this, let's put it into place, we'll move forward.
So basically it means that the option's there, but the governmental entities are going to have to sell it to the voters.
And each other, I think, in many instances, yes, absolutely.
The state fund has been divided up very differently on that state gas tax. Some of it actually goes to recreation, some of it goes to major highways, and some of it goes to the counties. Has that formula changed?
No, that formula has not changed.
So there, for the small county roads, are there any improvements in how they will be funded?
Not in how they will be funded, but more in the amount of revenue that comes in. The concept is that it is to increase gas tax receipts over time, not in how the structure has changed. So no.
Okay, so counties would see that as particularly rural counties that are road heavy will see some kind of relief in the B&C road funds?
Correct.
Okay, very good. Let's talk about the other big bill that got most of the conversation. That was Representative Hutchings, 348, the Justice Reinvestment. Seems like everybody thought the concept was good, but how are you going to pay for it? And that was a big issue with the counties.
Absolutely.
How do you feel that's turned out?
I think it turned out very well, but that's for year one. I think we've got a multi-year process to see how we move forward. Again, the concept is to try to change our legal proceedings, our penalties for drug offenders, to try to get fewer people to prison, fewer people in jail, and more people into rehabilitation and into recovery. It's a great concept, great idea, very dedicated people worked on it quite a bit. The problem is, how much attention does the issue get as we move forward in time? Is there enough commitment from the legislature and the public over time to say, if we want to make this work, we need money to go into treatment, we need money to go into supervision, so we're not simply turning people out of jail and on into the community. That's a real difficult question to answer ahead of time. I think we've got to wait till we get to the point where we're asking for funding for certain functions that have to be accomplished. When we get there, we'll know, but right now, we've got a lot of dedication and a lot of people interested in carrying it forward.
There still is concern that actually having that mental health money, particularly in light of Healthy Utah, and it's being kicked further down the road, could spell trouble. What is your take on that?
I think if we don't adequately fund treatment needs and community supervision and community responses, then we will simply end up with more people with lower level offenses, but having the same substance abuse problems they have, or people with mental illness that's not treated ending up going to jail less frequently, but still being in the community and not having treatment. The challenge is, how do we find money, state dollars, to fund that? Right now we've turned down federal dollars to match those state dollars by rejecting Healthy Utah or Medicaid expansion. Whether that's a good or bad decision, I'm not opining on now, but the bottom line is we've got to find ways to fund what we need to make sure we carry that forward. If we don't, we simply end up with things the same.
Does the failure of Medicaid expansion actually, beyond House Bill 348, does it have some implications for counties from your chair?
Oh, it absolutely does. Counties, even without House Bill 348, we carry responsibility for providing drug treatment services in our communities. We provide mental health treatment in our communities. We provide law enforcement response in our communities and prosecution. And all of those events could be diminished in their impact if people had access to treatment. And that's exactly what Healthy Utah offered.
Isn't it part of the problem, too, also that prior to the Affordable Care Act, there were different revenue streams and avenues for block grants and things for counties and local entities to do some of this work, but those block grants dried up with the Affordable Care Act. Is that a proper assessment, or?
I don't think that's quite accurate. There have been some reductions in what's available, but it's still a good deal of money available out there from the federal government. We anticipated that there'd be pulling back from some of those funding sources. In fact, that hasn't turned out to be true necessarily, which may be part of the concern people have of how you fund a new program and how you broaden that. But what it is what it did offer was simply the ability to say, let's use federal dollars to try to meet some of those needs locally, and those needs are basic, fundamental law enforcement related needs and community protection and community response needs to help citizens get better. And that is what's lacking. I know there'll be discussion during the interim about where to go and how to move that forward, but right now we are very concerned about what has been lost, what we haven't been able to pick up, and we'll be involved in discussions as we go forward over the summer.
Great, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back with more of the county seat. We'll move on to some of the public land issues.
There are a couple great things about the Uinta Basin. One is it's still small, it's community.
That makes you feel like when you go somewhere, you know everybody.
Where you know your neighbor knows you, and you can trust each other. People look out for one another.
I grew up in the Uinta Basin, and I think that it's a good place to raise a family.
So we packed up our 3 kids, and here we came to Uinta County, and what a great place it was.
It's not too big, it's not too small.
And it has a lot to offer that you just don't get in the big city anymore.
You go through the day-to-day repeating what you did yesterday. Don't you wish you could access that piece of your life that's missing? Find the beauty, serenity, family fun, or anything else that's missing from your life in the Cedar City, Bryan Head area. Gain access to your adventure, whether it's camping, hiking, the arts, festivals, or just a getaway. Visit cedarcityayl.com for details on all the adventures that you can access in scenic southern Utah.
Kanab, base camp for your southern Utah adventures. You belong in Kanab.
Remember those good old days? The places you went with your family when you were young? Reinvest in those old memories by making new ones. Beaver County is the perfect place to start that new tradition. Enjoy your favorite pastimes with family and friends. Connect with the history and culture of Utah in a place that's looking to the future. Modern conveniences minus the hustle and bustle of other locales. Beaver County, your adventure starts here.
Welcome back to the county seat. We're doing a legislative wrap-up. Mark, I'm so sorry we ignored you in that entire first block.
Quite all right, Chad.
So
I enjoyed that discussion.
We'll try and make up for it right now. Let's talk about some of the public lands related things, because there were actually quite a few of them that came through that all have some impact, or will have some impact. First off, county planning, the HB 323. Why is this bill so important?
Because federal law requires BLM, Forest Service, other land management agencies to toe the line and be consistent with county planning, state and local planning. And so it's up to counties to have good plans. That takes money, Chad. It takes science. It takes careful planning. We got good support this year from the legislature, who set out some benchmarks on what those plans need to have. There are certain items that each plan needs to cover, and we got some good funding from the legislature to do that. So,
do you think there's going to be some resistance from a few counties about it?
You know, I really don't. Some counties may be more engaged than others, because some counties have more natural resources than others, and so the level of involvement may be different. But you know, if the counties don't do the plans, then the state will come in and do it anyway. So I think there's a lot of incentive there for the counties to do it. There's money for it, there's expertise for it, so we look for good things this next year.
Okay, here's one that as I perused the papers, really didn't get much conversation, but it's still pretty important. Catastrophic fire public nuisance, number 408.
Very important.
What? Tell us about that, because a lot of people out here are going, what is he talking about?
There's an age-old legal concept called public nuisance. It means that if a landowner is managing their land in such a way to cause other landowners to suffer economic harm or health injuries or whatever, those people have a cause of action for public nuisance. What the legislature has done is codify that and empower county officials to seek abatement of public nuisance on all types of lands, including federal land. Counties are authorized under this new law to declare a public nuisance, say on a hillside, and to engage with the federal agency with help from the governor and the AG on a plan to abate that nuisance. So it's a really important tool that I think county officials, you'll see them using, because a lot of our lands really are, frankly, public lands are a public nuisance in terms of fire risk, damage to watershed, and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Apache County, Arizona, that was just a huge impact by federal inaction that affected Tombstone.
And you know, Huntington Canyon in Emery County, the catastrophic fire there, the folks are still suffering from poor water quality, and fisheries have been destroyed, and so it's a real risk.
I think one of the things that I liked most about that piece of legislation, and we ended up getting that passed, I think, about 11:58 after it got in the queue and then sat for a while. But one of the things I liked the most about that was the concept that it's not simply for the county official or someone else working on behalf of the county to go on to the land and correct the nuisance, but it is a process for saying, hey, landowner, you have a responsibility to ensure that you're not creating a risk for your neighbors by taking appropriate action to correct the condition on your property. That's a process that cities use, that a private entity can use to bring a complaint to the county. That's the kind of thing that we should be doing, not simply self-help, but getting into the court and saying, we need to correct this. And if the landowner won't, then someone else needs to be authorized to take action through legal means. It's a good idea. It's a good planning mechanism.
Let's talk about energy zone amendments. Another bill that kind of buzzed by.
Energy zones have been established by the legislature now for the past 3 or 4 years. Started out in Uinta Basin and the Green River Price area. And we're expanding energy zone recognition now into San Juan County. Very important resources there. Basically what that is a tool for counties to use in federal resource management planning, just like environmental groups say, hey, we have these lands that are important to us. Counties can say, we have these energy productive lands that are important to us. See our map. And that's used as a tool, just like others use their maps for tools. And so, again, it's strengthening the county's hand in the resource process. And the map, the bill this year specifies a certain area in San Juan County that is mineral rich and energy rich.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, I'd like to follow up with one more public land and try and make sense out of all of it collectively. We'll be back with the county seat in just a minute.
Color. It's something that can be seen. But have you ever wanted to reach out and touch it? Experience it. In San Juan County, Utah, color comes to life like nowhere else on earth. Color can be more than an abstract. Color can be your gateway to a new world. Visit San Juan County and explore the past, present, and future in a way that you've only dreamed of. San Juan County. Color your experience.
Imagine a unique, breathtaking cascade misting into the deep pool below. A world-renowned national scenic byway that snakes through some of the greatest views in the world. A canyon painted red by the hands of time. A land that brings the Wild West back to life. And it's all in one amazing place. Here's some advice when visiting Bryce Canyon Country. Take your time.
What's the story of your life? What chapter are you on? Did you happen to get married recently? Perhaps you found your lost puppy at the animal shelter. Or you're taking an art class at the senior center. There's that flu shot that kept you well last season. And don't forget the museums and historical sites your family loves. And all the fun you have at the County Swim Center. County services from search and rescue to maintaining roads bring tremendous value to each of our lives. We're the Utah Association of Counties, helping you build the story of your life.
Landscapes as diverse as the people who venture to find them await. All you have to do is find a place to begin. Moab, Utah, in Grand County, where adventure begins.
Welcome back to the county seat. We took a break when we were on some of the public lands bills. The last one we didn't get to, and given the show of the last few weeks on our program, it's probably pretty important, grazing zone amendments. Tell us a little bit about that bill.
Grazing zones are utilized just like energy zones are. Those started 2 years ago, and most counties south of the I-70 have legislatively created energy zones. What this bill did this year is expand recognition into Washington County, number one. But number two, for all energy zones, the bill establishes another tool for county officials to use, and that is the tool of grazing. It's not an orthodox thing. You don't think of grazing as a means of controlling wildfires. It's not the first thing you think of. But in fact, people in the know that prescriptive grazing is a wonderful way to reduce fuel load, especially for cheatgrass. Chad, we had a 600,000 acre fire in 2007 known as the Milford Flat Fire. Most people agree that could have been reduced had there been proper prescriptive grazing on the cheatgrass. So it's another tool to be used like public nuisance for officials to say, hey, federal government, we can avert a fire danger here very cheaply and very efficiently. Let the cows out early on this hillside. Let them graze down the sheetgrass. Let them reduce the fuel load. So,
in fact, the Milford Flat Fires were the location of the famed magic fence, right?
I believe so, yes, yeah. Where federal land that was mismanaged on one side burnt, and private land that was managed correctly did not burn.
It's a very, but let me ask a question, because we've done a lot of land bills, and there have been groups that are saying, why are you guys doing this? I mean, federal's got regulations on federal land, you're targeting federal land. Why are we making this investment in all these bills? It's going on for 3 or 4 years now.
2 reasons. First, the little secret is those federal regulations you mentioned happen to require federal agencies to comply with state and local plans. So this is all about beefing up local plans. But there's a second important reason, the transfer of public lands movement. Who knows where that movement will go? Nobody's smart enough to figure out the future, right? But we can show the world through these plans that we know how to manage our lands. And we're going to have turnkey Cadillac County plans in a year, and we're going to have other prescriptive tools for doing it, and we can show that we can manage the lands in an environmentally sound and economically productive manner. So that's what's going on, Chad, with that.
And Chad, I think I'd add one of the things that certainly Mark and I believe in working where we do is that local governmental control and local involvement in what's taking place at the governmental level is very important, and that's where people can have access and can have an impact. From our perspective, I'd ask anybody listening to the show, think about everything that you believe that the federal government does really well. And if that list is long, great. If not, that's sort of where we come from on this discussion too. Local control is good because people can be responsive. At the federal level, there are many things that they don't manage properly. We believe our public lands is one of those things. They do some of it well, but for the most part, there's a lot of shortcomings. We want to be able to be involved in how we fix some of those problems.
Well, you actually wrapped up my show for me perfectly, because I always come to the end and say, remember, local government is where your life happens. Be involved in the process. Thank you guys for joining us for the County Seat. Thank you for inviting us into your home each and every week. Be sure to tell your friends about it. Follow up with us on our social media, and we'll see you next week on the County Seat. If you like this video, then we invite you to subscribe to our channel, The County Seat. You can do that here. And we invite you to share with your friends. We also invite you to get all the latest up-to-date information by following us on our social media channels. And if all else fails, make sure that you watch The County Seat Sunday morning at 8:30 right here on ABC4 Utah.